Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining me back here on KB Decor Crafts. For today's video, I created a few more boho inspired pieces. I got my inspiration mostly from some Pinterest ideas that I found, and I decided to make some dupes using Dollar Tree items. I really love how everything turned out, and I hope that you do too. I'm even more excited to be collabing with one of my fellow YouTube DIYers and good friend Nicole from The Week's Nest. She makes beautiful and inexpensive decor pieces, and my favorites are her Trash to Treasure videos. I just think she's so creative and she's the sweetest, and you will absolutely love her channel. So make sure you check out her boho inspired pieces, and I will have her link in the description down below. Now let's get started. So to begin with, we're going to start with an 8x10 canvas from Dollar Tree that I removed from the frame, and we're going to be using the canvas, just cutting it down to be able to fit underneath the frame. To start the first design, I'm going to start by mapping out where I want each section of lines to go. In this piece, it's basically a bunch of lines going in different directions, so with my ruler, I'm going to go ahead and map out where I want those lines to go. I was really inspired by this picture that I found on Pinterest, and since I had a few extra canvases from Dollar Tree, I decided to give this a try. So now I'm just going back in with my ruler against those lines that I created to create a gap between each section. So I decided to use some black acrylic paint for this, but you can choose any color you'd like to match your decor. For the first section, I'm going to start by creating some diagonal lines. Once those are done, I'm going to switch my direction over and start making horizontal lines in the next section. And then you'll see that I keep switching my direction in each section just to give it more of an abstract look. A little tip I can give you to help your paint glide on smoother onto the canvas paper is by dipping your paintbrush into water before dipping it into the paint. It helps when filling in these lines. And please don't be intimidated by this at all. You don't have to be a professional artist to make some really cool abstract art. For the next art piece, I'm going to be using 3 colors, black, gray, and dark gray, and then just start by creating some really odd shapes. I mean, really, the weirder the better. So I used this picture as reference as to where I wanted my weird shapes to go, and initially this is kind of the design I wanted, but you'll see as I go on that I changed things up a bit and just added my own touch to this. And like I mentioned before, there really is no wrong way to do this. You're just adding a bunch of different shapes, different lines, and I guess the key is to add different tones of color, which really makes it pop and look cool. So I'm using different tones that match with my decor, but you could change this up and do anything you want really. This is just for inspiration. Again, don't forget the tip that I mentioned earlier. Adding water to your paintbrush and then dipping it into your paint really helps glide on that color. And this is what mine ended up looking like, and I think I even added on a little bit more afterwards. So now for the frames that we removed off the canvas, I used a Waverly Wax Antique paint because you know that's my favorite, and I wanted this to be a lighter shade of that color, so as soon as I painted it on, I immediately wiped it off. Then to lighten it up even more, I took a piece of sandpaper and just began to sand around the entire frame. And the best way I find to gluing these onto the canvas is by gluing 2 sides of the frame first, placing it down, and then stretching out the canvas to the other sides that you're going to glue. That way you're not left with any bumps, and it's just completely smooth and stretched out underneath the frame. And don't worry about any of the canvas hanging over. You can just cut that off with an X-Acto knife, and I'm using one of the Dollar Tree small cutting boards and my X-Acto knife from Walmart to cut off any excess that I have on this frame. And here's both pieces together, and this is how I hung it up on my wall, and I love how they turned out. They look really cool in our bedroom. For the next DIY, we're going to use this mirror in Raffia from Dollar Tree. To begin, I grab one of the bushels and extend the stems downward to make sure they're nice and straight, and then with another piece of raffia, I tie the very top of them all together. Then just using a piece of tape, I go ahead and tape that down to my surface. I'm going to just braid this using a simple 3-strand braid and braid this all the way down until I've run out of the raffia. Once I've reached the end of my braid, I just grab another piece of raffia and just go ahead and tie the ends of that. Then with a pair of scissors, just go ahead and snip off the very ends and the very top as well. I was able to use the whole pack and make 3 braids out of this raffia pack. So to start with the mirror, I removed the mirror backing from the frame, and I actually painted mine, but it's not really necessary if you're going to stain it like I ended up doing. But I began by gluing down my raffia braids, starting from the inner corners of this frame. Make sure you're adding glue as you wrap this braid around to make sure it stays in place. Thankfully, I was able to use all 3 braids and completely cover this frame. Wherever the braid ends is where you'll want to begin gluing down your next strand of braids. You should then have a fully covered frame. I'm going to use the dowels that I got from Dollar Tree to do the rays of the sun. I'm going to start by getting 2 of the sticks, marking them with my ruler to 4 inches. You could use a good set of wire cutters to cut this down, but instead I'm going to use my mini table saw that I got from Amazon, and I'll have the link in the description box below if you want to check that out. But this gives you a cleaner cut in my opinion, and I'll just go ahead and sand that down, just make it nice and smooth for a cleaner look. So for the other dowel, I wanted to cut the ends but on a slant, so I adjusted my saw to a 45-degree angle just to be able to cut the tip to a slant and connect better with the other dowel. So as you can see, this comes out with a really nice clean cut. Now just take a piece of sandpaper just to smooth down any edges, but this will now connect nicely with the other dowel. Now to cut down these dowels, I will mark right at the very line right before the 4, just to give it a little shorter marking than the other dowel, and then just trim that down as well. So now we have the 2 pieces that we will now glue together to create the first ray of light. I just used some Gorilla Wood glue to attach these together. And just to note, I made 7 of these smaller sizes. I made another set of 7 with the marking of 4.5 inches. Those will go right underneath the smaller ones. I was originally going to leave the color as is, but I then decided to stain this using the Waverly Wax Antique paint, and I completely covered the entire braided frame and then began staining the rays of light as well. If you plan on staining yours, you don't need to paint the original frame like I did. Instead, I would have just left it black. And then, like I said, I just started staining the dowels as well, and then wiping off the excess with a paper towel. Once everything is dry, go ahead and add some hot glue to the tips of the dowels and then glue them towards the back of the frame, if that makes sense. These are the larger sizes that we're going to be gluing all around the frame. And as you can see, each dowel will be glued right next to the other one going in a star shape. Then it's time to glue the smaller pieces, which those are going to go in between each of the dowels that we glued in the back. So it's kind of easier to see it done rather than explaining, but each one is going to go right in between. And then go ahead and pop back in the mirror in place. And then you're all done. I put this one in my bathroom and I think it looks super cute. For an easier DIY, I'm using a planter and beaded stickers from Dollar Tree and painting the entire planter with white Waverly chalk paint. Then also using the same paint to cover up the beaded stickers. Once that's dry, I'm going to use some black chalk paint to create a teardrop looking shape on the front of my planter. Once I have the shape that I want, I'm going to go ahead and fill that in with the black chalk paint. Your teardrop shape should look something like this. Going back to the beaded stickers, we're going to remove one and place it at the very tip of this design. Then go ahead and continue to place the stickers inside of the teardrop, creating a beaded effect. Once my entire shape was filled in, I then grabbed some Mod Podge and a paintbrush and just Mod Podge over the beaded stickers to make sure that they wouldn't fall off. And this is how it looks when it's completely dry. Now taking a piece of foam, I'm going to hot glue that to the bottom of my planter. I found these tropical leaf picks at the Dollar Tree a few months ago and I thought they'd be perfect to go with the boho theme. I may eventually change these plants to a more real plant, but for now these work just fine. And I just separated them from the stem using some wire cutters. I also made sure to cut down at different lengths to give it a more realistic look. I then just started inserting them into the foam piece, just trying to find a way to make it look more like a realistic plant and not just some picks. And here's the final look. This was another Pinterest inspired DIY. For my last DIY, I used these two frames that I found at Dollar Tree. I went ahead and marked off where I needed to cut down to get the bottom piece of the triangle off. To remove the bottom piece of the triangle, I just used my handsaw. I was able to rip off the little fox design that was on top very easily, and then with a piece of sandpaper just sanded down any of the glue that was left over and also taken off that sheen that was on top of this. I also painted in black chalk paint to cover this up and give it more of a matte look. Once both of those are dry, I then glued the two ends together with some wood glue. Then letting these both dry completely, and trust me, you want to let them dry before grabbing them. I learned the hard way. This DIY gave me some challenges, but I was so determined to do this, and initially the two backings just were not matching, so I finally got the bright idea to use some poster paper from Dollar Tree to make the back part of this design. I just traced the outline of this diamond shape. I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner, but it worked out great. Then of course go ahead and cut that out. Alright, so bear with me guys. This is a little hard to see, but I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can. So I'm starting off by making a line in the middle, then cutting this into thirds with two more straight lines across to create my tribal design. Next, take the ruler and place it above the middle line that we created and make another line above that and underneath it as well. Now we can start to connect the lines by creating two angles that meet the middle. Then go ahead and repeat the same steps on the other side. For the next 2 lines going up, go ahead and make another angled line connecting to the other one, kind of like creating an upside down triangle. You might be able to see a little bit better here, but I promise you'll be able to make sense of all these lines once I start filling this in. Then at both ends of this diamond, we're going to create a really small diamond. Now here I am hoping that you can see a little bit better, but it's kind of hard to still see. But I also included a diamond in the center of this entire piece. And then I'm going to go and add another diamond kind of outlining that, so that way I can fill in the center one in all black paint and leave the outline white. I really hope I'm explaining this good enough for you guys, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So now I'm going to start filling this all in with some black chalk paint. Now finally you can start seeing what this is supposed to look like. So go ahead and continue filling this all in with the black chalk paint. And don't forget about the little diamonds on the ends. Now that the outside portion is all filled in, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the diamond on the inside. Then I'm just taking some white chalk paint to clean up any edges of the black paint. Now, you could easily find a printable to print out a tribal print instead of painting this on yourself, but in the end, this is the result that I got by hand painting it, and I love it. Now, I'm going to take some pliers and just remove the back pieces that would have held the backing of these frames, and they just come out really easily. Then taking some good old Elmer's glue stick and gluing that all over the back of the frame to glue on the back piece. Go ahead and place the frame right on top and make sure it's nice and smooth and glued on properly. Now here's the finished result. I made 2 different versions. You'll have to let me know which one you like better. I had a lot of fun creating these boho inspired pieces for my bedroom and my bathroom, and they all just turned out so cute. I would really love to see if you recreate any of these. Don't forget to tag me on Instagram and leave me in the comments below which one was your favorite. And don't forget to check out my girl Nicole over at the Week's Nest and see what she came up with. And if you're new from her channel, thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next one.